A Ghost in the Machine. Time Within the Universal Time. Written by Carlos Pacheco. www.diaryofthoughts.com. Sometimes we wished that time could fly without realizing that every second of it is precious as it makes part of our time. Our time should be lived intensively, profiting all those moments that were given to human beings and all living species as if they were the last ones. This awareness would change the full significance about time, the time of our existence. The real significance of our time is essential as it creates a natural balance that leads to happiness and tranquility. Understanding time as it is instead of fighting against it, without counting time in decreasing order as if we were assisting to a candle burning along the winds of life. Due to that lack of perception about our time, most of the people burn their time of existence, only giving its right value when facing the final time that life decided for some of us at the exact time that it is determined to be so. At the same time, we put ourselves in their place, and we want to live intensely the time we have left, the time we aren't able to understand as mere human beings and being submitted to that reality. By doing so, we become temporarily aware of that gift that was brought by creation, and we're willing for a new start. As life shows us, gives us examples about life and death, she's doing nothing but giving us moments that lead us to conclusions about how important is our time. It is as saying to us all that we should make the best out of it, briefly. How important and fundamental life is. It's a fact that nowadays, people are more and more submitted to the act of measuring time, as the existing technology push our minds at an incredible speed. From a personal level to a professional one, we are obliged to count every minute, and in the end, we find ourselves acting like machines, like computers. The other day I was having this conversation with my best friend Paul, to whom I dedicated my first book. At a certain point, we started to talk about computers and we compared it with our behaviors as human beings. I already mentioned, even dedicated a chapter about this subject in my first book. I think it's never enough to talk, even repeat ourselves about certain topics, mostly the ones that make part of our daily lives, and in this case it is never sufficient to do it again. Computers integrated so much in our habits that they became part of us. They became a necessity, a dependency in a certain way. But in this particular case, we were discussing the soul of a computer as if it would detain a spirit of its own. At that point, I started to make a certain analogy between the spiritual concept that makes part of my life and the definition of what we might consider as being the soul of the machine. On chapter 1 of my first book, I mentioned about my belief that life is made of 3 different elements: the energy that makes us move and exist, the logic that implies intelligence, and feelings that represent love and harmony. The first one being related to the universe as energy it is, the second being the ultimate goal of the Creator, the third being common to the 2 dimensions and the key that neutralizes the confrontation between the first ones. Based on that personal concept, that perception of mine about these 3 elements that control our existence, I told my friend that if we consider that our spirits, our souls are made by energy, it would be possible for a machine to have a soul. In fact, if that energy would generate intelligence, computers at their highest level of technical development would have a spirit of their own. When we talk about artificial intelligence, we are only mentioning the fact that billions of information, namely data, are being accumulated, compiled, and put into a machine so that decisions and behaviors could become rational and organized. The only difference between human beings and computers is that the first ones are limited in their intellectual performance in what concerns the process that implies the treatment of the existing data that invades our souls. We can detain all the information that we can imagine, but we are not able to put all those elements together at the same speed, the speed of reasoning and coordination, that is present on a machine. If we consider that there is a substantial degree of energy that is generated inside a computer, we can pose the question if all that energy will not produce a conscience, a soul, a spirit in the machine. After all, the machine is conditioned to the logical data that the computer contains, and being the result of our souls, our intelligence as human beings. This conclusion can also lead us to think that ourselves, human beings, could be nothing but merely programmed machines carrying an autonomous intelligence, still being linked with the whole network of souls and spirits, being our flesh and bone just a vehicle like the body of a computer and its technological elements. Existential questions can be generated as a result of all those questions and doubts that can change our religious and social education radically. If we were sure about this thesis, the whole society would live on a different basis. The consciousness about being linked, or that everything is linked in a certain way, would bring us a new meaning, a different approach to relationships and everything that it represents. Social life would be different and based on logic and comprehension. If we link again that third element called feelings to those first elements, energy and logic, we finally get to the conclusion that everything has its explanation, but we simply don't understand the extension of its content, which is unlimited, which is infinitive. That new perception, new notion about infinite, would bring us a different approach to the way we interpret our existence, namely about the beginning and end of our lives. Bill Gates wrote a book published in 1999 called Business at the Speed of Thought. I find it funny and weird at the same time because, instead of using the usual term speed of light, for instance, he preferred to use the term thought that intrinsically matches the name of my book. After all, it's all about thoughts, and without knowing it, they travel at the speed of light or even faster. If someday human beings would be able to measure the speed of their thoughts, they would be astonished. It's a fact that people are different in their reactions, in their thoughts, and depending on this, there are the ones that can focus their attention on a single task or procedure, and others are thinking what I used to call multitask. It's my case. Like any other thing in life, there are advantages and disadvantages, as one person who concentrates on a single task isn't able to accomplish with different events. This concentration can lead to perfection, but it takes time, and it doesn't mean that the final result will be positive. On the other hand, if we manage to control our thoughts and at the same time, being able to create an inner organization to control them, we'll be able to win time and accomplish with multiple achievements. Some people have that capability. I immigrated to Luxembourg due to a contractual agreement, as at the time I was working for a multinational company for real estate. My mission was to coordinate a whole network of representatives that worked in different European countries. I worked along with a secretary, and due to that multitasking side of mine, we managed to perform work that could easily match 4 or 5 people, and I can tell you that is not easy at all to reach such a level of performance. As I said before, fighting against time and coordinating procedures of this kind lead to a continuous stress, and lots of times the final result wasn't very productive. This context reveals that either focusing or just dispersing ourselves doesn't forcibly imply a good result. This example also expresses at what point our brain, our reasoning, is so similar to a machine, and we can't forget that human beings created the machine and not otherwise. Operating systems represent the chain of logic that is contained in human intelligence, and this one is a gift that creation gave us to attain a superior state of mind, a higher level of understanding. Bill Gates also mentioned on the cover of his book the comment, using a digital nervous system, and these words match what I just said. In reality, the whole concept of computer systems and the internet are nothing but a very complex nervous interactive system. Without the physical component as the machine itself, it wouldn't be possible to create that endless network called the internet. A processor is nothing more than the equivalent to a human brain due to its faculty to interpret and treat data. The body of a computer is nothing but flesh and bone, equivalent to a human skeleton, and all the electric and electronic components are nothing but organs that accomplish a particular maintenance of the whole thing, exactly like a human body. This comparison also translates a certain analogy between the usual term, "We are made in the image of God," as in fact we could also claim that computers are made in the image of human beings. Finally, the whole of life has a hierarchy where everything is connected and interdependent. The other day I was at my best friend's place to assist with the installation of a Mac computer. There was this black technician that started to talk with me about this amazing computer world and everything that is implied in it. At a certain point, we began to relate science fiction with the main subject of our conversation, and it became even more attractive. I told him that, in my opinion, our brain is nothing but a receptacle of a superior intelligence, and that I have seen a picture that showed the resemblance between a brain cell and the images of the cosmos. He told me that there was an ancient scientist that he couldn't recall his name, who wrote hundreds of years ago that every visual and physical thing around us matches an image of the cosmos. Incredible but true. That made me also think about the connection between the outer space and our existence as human beings, being nothing more after all than a reflection of the universe himself, the creation. Going through that conversation we had, We reached a point where we naturally started to talk about our doubts and fears as being humans submitted to a particular ignorance, and he told me something that is true. He said, quoting, "The complexity of the answer depends on the meaning that you put into the question in the first place. That is true as we all put a meaning in every question we ask. Depending on that meaning, there is the difficulty or the facility of obtaining the final answer, meaning that it all depends on the way we put the question in the first place. If we put it in a too complicated way, maybe we'll obtain an elaborate explanation, still never be the final answer at all due to that same complexity. On the other hand, if the question is addressed in a simple way in a different perspective, the answer can be obtained more easily. The only thing that changed was the humble and simple meaning that we put into it, the reason why our ancestors found answers based on simple thoughts. Sometimes, these conclusions bring us some doubts and fears as some people start reasoning at a profound existential level, and at that point some of them pose the question, are we human beings, nothing but machines created by a higher intelligence under an organic structure? Once again, humans are faced with the mystery of life and her complexity. If it weren't our beliefs and convictions, we would perish at an emotional level as we wouldn't be able to accept that possibility, and that makes the whole difference between human beings and mere machines. Life has her cycle and is nothing but an eternal repetition of events, these last ones being different by their evolution regarding reasoning, regarding intelligence by achieving results that we never thought would be possible. If we notice the evolution that occurred these last 60 years, we easily get to the conclusion that time changed while going through history itself. We are constantly changing and evolving. Talking about repetition, I'm sure that people who read my first book realized that there is a recurrence of notions and thoughts. Also in this second book, I think it's never too much to adopt that method to affirm our inner ideas by expressing them in a different way, still the message being there all the time. Following this notion about repetition, nowadays I find myself noticing that grown-up people are regressing in time in a certain way, as I assist to people playing games like children while using their phones or computers. It's funny the way we can relate our past as children and our present days as adults. In fact, we are all revisiting the times of our infancy, traveling in time and being children again. Time also exists in our minds as we are always establishing links with our past. Memories are nothing but links with time, and aspirations and visions only translate that we can travel into the future, even if it is in an imaginative way. But it's for sure that while doing that, we are constantly traveling in time. It's all those invisible links that are constantly present, but we simply don't notice them, their presence, their importance in our lives. After all, Facebook is nothing but a global network of links where people can exchange their ideas and thoughts, and this represents a concrete evolution in terms of human communication, as we're constantly learning with each other. In my life, I always connected every single event and attitude coming from people around me. As a matter of fact, if we start paying attention to everything that is happening as a result of our thoughts, we finish verifying that there are these strange coincidences that happen as thinking about one subject and some minutes later watching a documentary or interview on TV concerning that same topic. Other times we think about someone and we receive an email or a phone call from that person, even if we don't see her for a long time, and that makes us say, I was just thinking about you. All these strange coincidences make part of that magic of life, those mysteries that we don't completely understand but being able to have perceptions about them. But returning to the main subject of this chapter, one of these nights I was watching a documentary concerning people who are affected by some brain diseases as a result of an accident or by natural causes, like Alzheimer's disease for instance. While they were explaining about all the consequences of being affected that particular way, I established the link with time, as those people's primary problem is their incapacity to identify their past existence, thus being unable to know themselves entirely. This inability must be terrible as a sensation. I think that if I lost track of my past, I would be just living the present. If this process were continuous, I would be forgetting every single previous moment and limit myself to breathe and survive. All the significance, all the meaning of the past, of my experiences that brought me a certain knowledge about my existence, would be systematically destroyed. Once again, we verify how important, even fundamental, to report ourselves to time itself, independently from the fact that time is infinitive with no beginning or end. In fact, human beings can only identify the time of their existence within this infinity of universal time. While measuring time, we find ourselves fighting against our time, and this personal existential issue is at the origin of all the excesses committed in life, for people who don't accept the time that was given to us all by the Creator. This reaction is the negative result obtained from the incomprehension about our final destiny. And finally, it is that misunderstanding that causes all the misery and pain that we are facing in society. Relationships are consolidated with time as we share moments, segments of time that stay in our memories. With time, we learn to know each other, our behaviors and attitudes, our values and principles, sometimes reaching a point when two people become a single individual by understanding themselves so much. This situation happened with my late wife, as many times we did know what the other one was thinking without pronouncing a single word, just with a mere glance, due to a gesture or reaction. Everything has its time, even happiness. The more we measure time to reach happiness, the less we get it, as this one has its time, and it has to happen naturally. Feelings can be born in a single second, but they need time to consolidate, one of the reasons we use to say that time does everything. Conclusions are reached with time, and with time we learn about good and bad, right and wrong, and so on, in spite that there are people that spend their entire lives without learning a thing. After all, whether we believe it or not, our existence is like a digital print in time, and our genetic matrix will be there, eternally present. A Ghost in the Machine. Time Within the Universal Time. Written by Carlos Pacheco. www.diaryofthoughts.com